Christopher Scott, you said not allowing women to vote is illogical. What law of logic does not allowing women to vote
Great question.
violate?
Logic.
Do you want to respond to that?
You love logic. You should know the 3
Driena?
laws of logic, right?
I've already answered that question multiple times. I'm trying to get off this podcast.
Well, I mean, be a good sport. The people sent in some super chats.
There's no such thing as a law of logic. How's that?
Are you serious?
The law of logic. That's a good one.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Welcome back to Shasty Unchained. Today I'm breaking down the debate between Rachel Wilson and Driena Sixto to show you how a woman can have a political science degree, call herself a patriot, a conservative, and still operate on a feminist system that's designed to hollow out your mental health and destroy our civilization. Watch for the moment the mask slips. Watch for the rejection of duty. If she tells you her only obligation is to herself, she isn't a partner. She's a consumer, and you can't build a future with someone who thinks the world begins and ends with her own ego. Pay attention, because the is and the ought are about to collide. Let's get into it.
She received bachelor's degrees in political science and international relations from Florida International University. You each get a 5-minute opening, about 5 minute, 5, 6, 7 minute opening statement each, and then we're going to head straight into opening conversation. And Rachel, you're going first with your opening statement. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian, for hosting this. Thanks, Driena, for coming. This is a debate I've wanted to have for a long time. It's very easy to debate like very woke leftist feminists and make them look kind of crazy, but I think that it's important that we have this discussion between women on the right as well, because I think we have a very serious problem in the media, especially with women who say they're right-wing, conservative, whatever kind of like term you want to use to say they're on that side of things. I think that just because you're not woke doesn't mean that you're conservative, and it doesn't mean that you're not feminist. So in Driena's first appearance, she said that she came to the podcast to help men and women like heal the divide and find a way to have good relationships again. She said she wants both parties to recognize what the other party brings to the table. So we'll talk about the table for sure. But I think her view and understanding of what feminism is, like most people, is based on propaganda, fallacious views of history through presentism, and just ignorance, which I don't blame her for. I'm not like calling her an ignorant person. She's a smart person. But most of us just haven't gotten the real story. We've heard a lot of things that we repeat and we don't really know why, and they're not exactly accurate. So I want to address some of that. I think that once I demonstrate that Driena actually holds a lot of more classical liberal egalitarian and therefore feminist views, what I predict is going to happen is she's probably going to want to obfuscate, do some stonewalling, and maybe even personal insults. Hopefully we don't have to go there. But I'm just going to keep redirecting it back to the topic and back to what we're here to discuss, which is feminism, especially among women on the right. Andrew calls them Fem-Cons, like feminist conservatives, but they're also kind of running a con, right? So Driena sees marriage more as a interpersonal legal contract, whereas my view of marriage is a lifelong sacramental religious commitment. So we're going to have some, trying to find some common ground to talk about marriage from those very different worldviews. But the problem with this is that, she made this assertion that she's a capitalist and that she's coming at this from a conservative capitalist view, but right out of the gate in your last appearance, we saw that that's not the case, because you said that you want things like prenuptial agreements, no-fault divorce, and the origins of no-fault divorce are Marxist in and of themselves. The first mention of such a thing was Frederick Engels' lifelong collaborator with Karl Marx, a revolutionary socialist. And then after he started to talk about marriage as this state contract, this no-fault divorce idea, what marriage could be, that was picked up by other people who then ran with it. The other problem that we have is this idea that women's unpaid domestic labor is capitalist, which was another assertion that you had that I would take issue with. That's another thing that is uniquely socialist and Marxist in its origins and in its nature. There were women like Marioso de la Costa and Selma James, whose work was adopted by socialist labor unions. They were the ones that came up with this idea of women's unpaid domestic labor in the home. And labor unions who wanted socialism ran with that because they thought it was a really good way to get women out of the home and into the workforce, where then the workers of the world could unite and we could get enough numbers on the socialist side to have a socialist revolution. So that is definitely not a capitalist position, that's a Marxist socialist position. And then you had this assertion to Andrew that people with prenuptial agreements get less divorce. And he argued that, okay, that could be correlated, but you can't prove that that's the cause or the reason. And I did a deep dive on that data, and he was absolutely correct. Instinctually, he didn't have data at the top of his head, but he knew that that was instinctually not causal. And when I dug into it, I in fact found that there are small like surveys they've done where it seems that people who have prenuptial agreements maybe have less divorce, but that's a selection bias issue, that people who have prenuptial agreements have higher incomes, they have more education. So there's nothing causal there saying a prenup is going to put you at less risk. It's more of a correlation. So I think there's just like a whole bunch of misunderstandings about this, and I'm super glad that we get to sit down and talk about this. The great Rush Limbaugh used to talk about the info babes at Fox News, the right-wing conservative media women, and say, hey, this is a problem because they're actually not conservative. They usually have a separate agenda for women. They usually have more of a classical liberal egalitarian view. And to me, that is feminist. I mean, feminism came out of the Great Enlightenment and the idea of egalitarianism, of trying to make everybody equal, social equality, social justice. So I'm happy to get into this and sort that out because I don't think it's a conversation we have enough.
First time in my life, I actually was called a feminist just a few weeks back when I was on the show by Rachel's husband. I'm pro-capitalism, pro-life. I'm pro-marriage, pro-children. I'm pro-Second Amendment, pro-small government. I am pro-U.S. Constitution, pro-homeschooling, and I believe taxation is theft. What I lovingly call repeal the 19th Rachel, and I disagree on, is that women have a right to vote and have equal rights under the law as men do. That's it. I am not here to argue in favor of feminism, and I really don't care about its history. My argument is that the root cause, like you mentioned, of most of our societal problems is the current disconnect between men and women, which has been encouraged by years by different entities, government entities, to divide and conquer us, put us at odds with one another. Not that women can finally vote. That's not what's causing it. And to help create a strong society with strong families, we need to bridge this gap, yes, between men and women, and get both sides to understand the other's inherent value. I also live in reality. We are currently in a never-before-seen scenario in history, right? Unaffordability is the highest it's ever been. The gap between wages and home prices is the largest it's ever been. I believe that's by design, to keep us, pissed off in a rat race, unable to reflect on really, who's behind all of this so that we can unite as a society and fight back against it. At the same time, women and men, well, women specifically, have relatively recently achieved true legal and financial equality in history. In fact, Gen X, like Rachel here, because I think it was 1980, which is the cutoff, is the first generation of women to live under true equality in the U.S., which was achieved with the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974. Before that, women couldn't have credit nor get loans without a male cosigner, and that's only 52 years ago. So for the first time in modern history, women are not financially dependent on men to live. And I argue that we should extract the positive things out of this crazy situation that we're in. And that's that since men and women don't financially need each other anymore, they can choose to come together for reasons other than financial reasons, like the character of the person and, I don't know, love. So good, loyal, smart, capable, intelligent, emotionally intelligent men see it as their time to shine, right? Because it's not about the money anymore. It's about being kind, equally competent as an adult, equally responsible for adult responsibilities, especially if you want to have a family. And this is what most women want now, for those of you guys that are hearing this for the first time. We all know that the economy is absolute shite right now, okay? And that raising a family on a single income is a luxury that most Americans can't afford. So instead of listening to women-hating manosphere podcasts that call you men specifically losers unless you're making $1 million a year, and that say women are materialistic or promiscuous and therefore, they're responsible for the loneliness epidemic, I suggest listening to people that don't make a living off of dividing the sexes, right? And making the problem worse, which I think is evil. And if we're trying to promote strong traditional family units, well, which I am, despite the economy, men need to become the kind of leaders that women can look up to, can trust, and can depend on. And it's in a woman's nature to look for these things in men for partnership, which means men cutting vices that keep you weak, addicted, and with a warped sense of reality when it comes to women, like pornography, which a majority of men consume, and I argue is the single largest contributor to the decay in relationships between the sexes. And I think afterwards, women will naturally want to look forward to relationships with men more. Because why would a woman marry a man that watches porn and thinks it's okay to do that while in a relationship, which in my book is emotional cheating? Or why would she marry a man that wants her to work and split bills, which I understand is the reality of most Americans, but then isn't equally competent or responsible partner when it comes to household duties or raising children? It just sounds like an irrational deal. Or worse, why would a woman want to give children to men who think being a stay-at-home mom has no inherent value? It's just what women are supposed to do when raising kids right is the pillar of a strong society, and the market value of what a stay-at-home mom does is extremely high. Or worse, nowadays there's men that say women that do want to be stay-at-home wives means that they're gold diggers, when nobody ever called grandma or great-grandma a gold digger for being a homemaker her entire life, right? So the solution to our modern problems isn't telling women that they shouldn't be allowed to vote or have financial independence, which is just a stupid, sexist, losing message for the right, but to make sure that men and women value the opposite sex and what they contribute to society. And the onus is on men to hold themselves accountable and become men worthy of leading a family, because women can't and shouldn't trust men or follow men that let vices or urges control them. And without strong men, women have had to step into their masculine energy and fill that void. And that's the problem we face, not that women have rights, right? And if you disagree with basic human rights for women, then I suggest never to be a hypocrite and take a one-way trip to Iran where women don't have rights and can't vote, right? Just like I'd recommend communists here in the US to take a one-way flight to Cuba if they don't like it here so much. That's my closing statement, well, opening statement.
Okay. Would either of you like to respond to anything you've heard there? Or?
Well, I think let's start with, what do you think feminism is? And then I'll tell you what I think feminism is.
So I don't really care because so many people have different definitions. I only care about two things, which is women voting and women having financial independence. That's it. I'm not here to argue for feminism in any other way. Just a woman's right to vote and a woman's equal financial rights and opportunities as men. So,
All right. We just heard both opening statements. Rachel is out here dropping historical receipts and laying out a coherent worldview. And then you have Driena. She says she wants to bridge the gap between men and women, but she's refusing to acknowledge the actual foundational architecture of that gap, how it was engineered in the first place and what's currently fueling its growth. She claims she isn't arguing for feminism, but that's a total grift. When you're running the same egalitarian operating system and you're still trying to push the same policies, you're just a feminist in a different coat of paint. Driena's entire defense rests on the idea that men and women are equal under the law, but she's missing a massive level of comprehension here. The is-ought gap. She thinks because something is the current legal standard, that's how it should be. She doesn't realize that the current is, this entire egalitarian experiment, this whole liberal worldview, is exactly why the West is in a civilizational downfall. This is the root of the rot. Have you ever heard the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? You can't bridge a gap by doubling down on the policies that caused the fracture in the first place. The truth is, we're watching weaponized empathy used as a tool for social destruction and political control. Women are being conditioned to believe that feeling good is the same thing as doing good. They're voting for progressive, destructive policies because they sound nicer, or because the state offers them the chance to be perpetually irresponsible. And the kicker? What's even more effed up is she says she has no duty outside of herself, and she fully believes that. When you reject duty, your God is just your own ego. That's not a partner, that's a consumer, an accessory. And we are just a designer handbag, a sport coat. Authority is the byproduct of responsibility, and the power is balanced by sacrifice. If you demand rights while denying duties, you aren't looking for a bridge. You're looking for a pedestal. You're looking for privilege. It's superiority dressed up in the costume of social justice and women's rights. Don't get it twisted, fellas. Pretty eyes and a fit physique are just optics. If her soul is hollow and refuses accountability, it's a hell no, bro. A hollow soul and no accountability? Hell no, bro. Hell no. You can't build a kingdom with someone who thinks the world begins and ends with their own desires.
Egalitarian rights.
Okay.
That's it.
So almost everything that you stated as your values and the things you care about here and in your opening are actually classical liberal positions. They are not conservative positions. Are you aware of that?
Explain. Which ones?
So saying egalitarianism, that was part of the French Revolution, the ethos, liberty, equality, fraternity. That's a revolutionary, classical liberal idea. It's not a right-wing conservative idea.
I don't care about. So this might be a short, debate. Who
Well, you
knows?
said you were a conservative,
Yes.
so.
Again, the only argument I'm making is that all citizens have inherent values. Doesn't matter the sex, doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter the nationality, ethnicity, or anything. I want you to make me an argument why you think that that shouldn't be the case, why women should be held,
So you said
not have the same
if
rights.
you don't like America, you can leave, right?
Yeah.
If you don't think America's the best, you can leave. We care about American foundational values,
Western
right?
values.
Okay, well, you said America, but let's just say
Mm-hmm.
Western. Okay, are you aware that this country was not founded on the idea of universal suffrage? That's a new progressive idea.
I know that it was not originally working that way, but the U.S. Constitution and the idea of the United States absolutely saw us all as equals. And then throughout the years, we had to super specifically define it because, it wasn't put that blatant from the beginning of time. But it's there in the Constitution that we all have inherent rights from God as equal human beings.
That's funny because it took until the progressive era to pass the 19th Amendment, which was a progressive piece of legislation. It was not conservative. So all I'm trying to do is say, please don't use the label conservative if you're actually a classical liberal. So let's just get that straight. All of your positions are classical liberal positions, and you're doing what a lot of MAGA babes do. They're like, I like Trump, and I want to deport illegals, and I'm not super woke, therefore I'm conservative. That's why I don't use the label conservative, because it means nothing anymore, because people like you are actually libertarians. You're classical liberals. You lean more progressive than not. And you call yourself conservative and then say, I'm the radical weirdo who's like this crazy person.
Yeah, well,
So-
there's limited amounts of titles on what to call people's individual political beliefs. There's usually just conservative, libertarian, Republican,
Right.
Democrat.
Don't you have a
and
degree though, in political science?
And yeah. And
Yeah, so why
everybody-
are you not aware that you're a classical liberal?
No, because that wouldn't specifically define my ideas. My personal ideas are way too broad. You can't just
Okay.
put.
What are
All right, if you made it through that, let's get to the gears of this grift. Rachel points out the political science degree for a reason. It removes the excuse of ignorance. When you have the credentials but you refuse to acknowledge basic definitions, you aren't debating. You're practicing sophistry. Sophistry is when you use clever, intellectual-sounding words to intentionally manipulate people away from the truth. Driena isn't worried about what's true. She's worried about protecting the false image she's built. She wants to be the conservative cool girl, the hot MAGA chick. She won't give up the feminist operating system that lets her live without any duty to anyone outside of herself, and completely denies it when the evidence that she is a feminist is put right in her face. Why won't she admit she's a leftist? Because she knows the conservative label is high-value real estate. There's high-value men. Nobody wants a soy boy leftist liberal. If she admits she's a liberal, the mask falls off and the simps stop following. So she denies reality when confronted with clear truth. She ignores the is-ought gap because acknowledging it would force her to admit that her is, the current state of the perception of female independence, is the very thing destroying the family structure. She's compromising logical standards for the sake of feelings, because feelings are easier to manipulate. Logic is cold. Logic has a hierarchy. Logic requires you to submit to the truth. But if she can abolish those standards, she can stay on her pedestal and keep people chasing an image that doesn't exist. This is the blueprint for modern manipulation. She's using weaponized empathy and equal rights talk to hide the fact that she has no intention of fulfilling a duty to anyone. She wants the rights of a man, the protection of a woman, and the accountability of a child. When you see a woman denying reality just to save her brand, stop being a simp and say, hell no.
Just go
you
into
don't want
prison.
lax criminal laws,
Correct.
but why would you defend keeping OnlyFans legal? Why should we allow young women to create their own pornography, produce it, and put it out into the public? Why?
I disagree that it's bad, but the why is because then it sets a dangerous precedent for censorship in the future on things that other people don't like. Because let's say then we fall under the government. Let me finish. Let's say we fall under the government of we have a Democrat president, and they believe that people saying right-wing things on live shows like this is bad. So we are going to ban that, and they did, by the way, under the Biden administration. That's what I'm saying. Banning things that we don't like and making it illegal is not the way to go. The way to go is showing people why you're right with arguments, with facts, with logic. And we can't set the precedent that, we as conservatives and Republicans don't like pornography. It's bad. Therefore, we're going to make it illegal. Then when a Democrat president comes along, they'll say Republicans that
I get your point. You don't have to keep repeating and repeating.
I feel like I need to for you to understand.
No, it's not me.
So you
who's
got it,
having
and everybody
trouble
at home got it, that it's a bad precedent. Do you understand that
If
then?
you take the libertarian progressive view that you have, sure. But what I would say is we believe in right and wrong, don't we?
Yep.
Okay, why don't we make things illegal if they are inherently morally evil? You said in your opening pornography is evil. Why would we not criminalize why do we criminalize murder? Why?
Because then somebody that has a different definition of evil than me can criminalize something that I believe in. Like, for example, saying that abortion is murder, then, we should, and by the way, this is actually happening in the UK. If I go out in the UK and I say abortion is murder and I read the Bible, I'm in the middle of the street, I'm going to get arrested. That's what
because
happens.
leftists like you run the UK. People with your same political positions run the UK, and they go, you can't say that. You're going to hurt someone's feelings, and they'll be upset, and then they won't vote for the Labour Party anymore. We need the Muslim vote. Don't tell them they can't have grooming gangs. That's you.
I'm making the argument that you don't ban what you don't like, Rachel.
I'm not banning something because I don't like it. It's not that you think I want to ban pornography because I don't like it or because it's morally wrong.
Okay, that's what I believe too. I think it's morally wrong.
Then why wouldn't you make it illegal?
Because somebody else might think that's something I believe in, like second.
So you believe in moral relativism.
Rachel,
so everybody gets to have their own version of right and wrong?
Like Second Amendment rights, the right to own, guns or whatever, that's morally wrong because it kills people. And then when they're in power, they will ban things that they believe are morally wrong. So that's why you can't set that precedent.
It's almost like this whole everybody voting thing is just a trap, and we're going to end up in a bad position no matter what we do, because it's inherently progressive, and it will give us a progressive society where we can't tell people the truth and we can't say what's right and wrong, because if we offend someone, they won't vote for us, and if we offend this group, they're going to start rioting. Are you starting to figure it out at all?
Not offend. Again, just because you can't make good arguments that convince people.
I'm not the one who's having trouble making good arguments. That would be you.
No, you're saying that we should not allow certain blocks of the population to vote because they would, down the line, vote against what you want. And that is obviously not the way to do things. The way to do things is by actually talking to
You're not framing that correctly either, though. I'm not saying, don't let this group vote because then I won't get what I want. I asked
that's what I believe exactly what you're saying.
Let me finish. You just yap and yap and yap. So let me finish first. You said at the beginning, you work in politics. Your job is to go around the country convincing, especially Spanish-speaking people, to vote for Republicans. You want them to vote for certain things.
I educate, yes, personally, yes, but in my current role, yes, I educate people on what are the political policies going on, who's promoting them, what they are, so that they can make educated decisions. Because with education,
I'm trying to do the same thing in a different way. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the fastest way to get to the dystopian nightmare that is the United Kingdom is to do what you're saying we should do. And you are also showing everybody that you're a moral relativist.
No, I think that the quickest way to get to where the UK is by banning free speech, which is what you just advocated for. And
how did they get there?
And banning things that you don't like.
How did they get there, though? Because the UK hadn't always had laws against free speech.
Nope.
They got that way because of mass immigration, equality, liberalism, all that stuff. Right. And that is what you'll end up with.
So let's address that problem.
That's what you'll end up with every time, because you can't just talk people into doing what's right. People vote based on incentive. No, people vote based on personal incentive.
I agree with that too.
Yes. So if there's a group that comes into the country and they're getting welfare benefits, if there's single moms out there that get welfare benefits,
which
things
is
like
highly illegal,
they're always going to be voting for that stuff. Yeah. But the reason we got that stuff is because women voted for it. Those things would have never been passed.
I don't think that having an open border policy for 4 years, like what happened under the previous administration, is something that women voted for.
It is.
It's something that
have you looked at the polling data on men
Rachel,
versus women on open borders?
Did women vote for the Mexican-American border to be completely open so that 20
They voted for all of the people who instituted those
can
policies.
come
Yes.
in?
Yes.
No, they did not.
Yes, they did.
Well,
have you looked at border states? You just keep talking about presidential elections. Look at border states.
Would either of you like me to look up any stats on this? Are men or women more in favor of illegal immigration?
Open borders.
Or
immigration,
I think
whatever.
a better one would be the percentage of Americans that are for voter ID, right? It's 83% nationally. So men and women, Democrat and Republican, for the most part, agree on this. So women are not just these
I'm not saying
irrational
everything
people.
women want is terrible and horrible.
Okay.
I'm
just the
not.
things you don't like.
It's not about me and what I like. I'm saying there's an objective right and wrong, and there's objective morality.
I agree
You're
with
the
that.
one who thinks that we should be
I agree with
pandering
that.
to people's emotions.
Yes, actually, you know what? That's a great lesson to learn, is that people don't care about what you say until they know that you care about something.
Right.
So
women, for sure.
Yes,
men are
and
much
men
more
too.
open to logical. It's not
And
100%.
too, but that's why you
women are
have to-
far more easily swayed and
Sure.
propagandized by emotion.
Sure, but that means that then
I don't
you
want a
have to
country
be-
run off of that system. I don't
you
want.
have-
All right, let's look at the logic here, or the lack thereof. Driena's out here defending the industry of sexual exploitation, not because she loves freedom, but because she's a moral relativist. She won't agree to ban OnlyFans because she's scared that if the conservatives aren't in power, someone might ban something she likes. If your only standard for law is whatever I'm allowed to do, if I'm allowed to do what I like to do, then you don't have a civilization. You have a shopping mall. You have chaos. She can't grasp that her precious Enlightenment view is exactly what allows for the inversion of morality based on the consensus of the majority. When you base truth on the whims of this majority instead of the laws of God, you end up with a society that calls evil good and good evil just to keep the peace, or maybe it's even more malicious than that. And what's with the constant bird hands, dude? Constantly spurging and grifting. It's pure ego. Pure ego. She's so passive aggressive. She's desperately trying to manifest this image of strength and intelligence while her actual arguments are crumbling. Remember, image is what this girl cares about. She'll claim to love facts and logic, but watch the tape, bro. She just repeats her opinions in a louder voice and projects her own ignorance onto Rachel. It's hilarious, really. She is her own biggest problem. She's also the only one in the room who can't see it. I've told you before, I don't always agree with red pill prescriptions, but I could not ignore their descriptions. Pretty on point. Driena's the best advocate for this I've ever seen. Every time she claws for power with those bird hands, every time she denies a duty or denies reality thrown in her face, every time she chooses self over society, she's hitting the nail on the head of what the red pill warns you about. She's proving the point while trying to debunk it. Make it make sense. It's called hoe math. And then Rachel brings the hammer down, dude. She points out cold, hard reality. Incentives drive the vote. When you promote an individualistic framework, you're just creating a marketplace for free shit. If you look at the stats, if women stopped voting today, we wouldn't see another Democratic president in our lifetime. They are voting for the state as father because they've been told that they don't need a man as long as they have a government check, as long as they're in power, as long as they can do whatever they want. They're trading the sovereignty of the family for the dependency of the nanny state. Don't be a simp just so you can get laid. If she's worried about what she's allowed to do instead of what she's called to do, dude, she's already lost.
Only one that I can come up with that makes you anything remotely conservative. So good job on that. But why do I think women shouldn't vote? Well, I'll tell you why I think women shouldn't vote. So you did a lot of hard work trying to get Trump reelected. You're very pro-Trump, and you want to help Republicans, right? And part of the reason you don't like this gender war is because you're like, look, this is a terrible position for the right. You're alienating all the female voters, right?
Yes, that's partially correct, yeah.
If women didn't vote anymore, we would never have another Democrat president. We would never have another Democrat Senate, and we would never have another Democrat Congress.
You're right. You're right, Rachel. You're
so that's
absolutely
one
right.
of the reasons that because of the values I hold, which are actually a lot more conservative, even though I don't like the term, I don't really care about Republicans versus Democrats, I think that the big tent Republicanism is just liberalism at a slower speed, like what you believe in. I don't believe in that. I'm a patriarchist. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I would be a monarchist if I could. But if we care about the things we say we care about, like small government, letting women vote ensures you will never have that again. The reason the 19th Amendment was passed was because the progressive era liberals wanted to pass the income tax. They wanted to pass the Federal Reserve Act. They wanted a nanny state with welfare. And they wanted pro-immigration open borders. And they knew that if you only let men vote, you're never going to get that agenda passed. The whole progressive agenda would have never been passed without women voting.
Okay.
And that's why I think that we should have some kind of restriction, as we had at the founding, where it's not just one person, one vote. There's a lot of ways you could do that. I'm not saying you have to just say no females voting. although I think that's a great idea, for a lot of reasons that we can get into. But you could do things like net positive taxpayers. You could do anything where you have to have skin in the game. But
I agree with the
if what you care about is keeping this conservative agenda that you say you want for us and the social and fiscal conservatism, the fastest way to ensure that you never get that passed is letting women vote.
Yes, Rachel, that is factually correct because most women vote left-wing, right? Even though most white women do vote Republican after the 1980s for president. But you're making the argument that because people disagree with my personal political beliefs, that I should take away their right to vote. I'd like to, and I disagree with that. I think that the way to get people to vote how I want them to is by arguing that my ideas are better than somebody else's, not taking away somebody else's right to vote. Because then you'd have to make the argument, Rachel, that we should take away black people's rights to vote, or that would be a good thing.
Why?
Because
Why would we have
let
to
me
say that?
finish. Because black people vote 80 to 90% Democrat in every presidential election, which is a racist, obviously, position to have. You don't tell people, and your ultimate solution isn't to stop people from voting because you don't get what you want. It's making arguments to convince said people that your ideas are better.
Well, I don't give a crap about democracy. I don't like the.
I'm glad to clarify
Yeah,
that.
I don't. I'm not a democracy enjoyer.
Okay.
I know that
Go to Iran?
I know
I don't
you think
know.
that's
Cuba?
Americanism, like the American ethos.
So many places.
America was not founded as a democracy, and if you went to school for this, I would expect that you would know more about this. It was not a universal suffrage democracy. It was a very extremely limited suffrage representative republic. That's not what we have now. So I am, if you want to call me the
Constitutional
traditionalist,
republic.
it's a representative republic.
It's a constitutional republic because the Constitution guarantees that individual rights aren't trampled upon, right? And that we still have certain things that we do vote on, policy differences, but the Constitution gives everybody certain inalienable rights.
Yes,
and so that is what the country was founded upon.
This
Yes.
is what I have a problem with, though. Is
You
that
have a problem with her
Yes, I
Constitution.
do. I do have
Okay.
a problem with it.
I'm
This
glad.
is why, and I know you think that's some big dunk, like, oh, she's. I can't believe she said that out loud, but I'm going to explain why, and everyone's going to agree with me. The fundamental flaw in our government is this idea that, oh, we can just keep changing it. So what it was founded as is not what it has become. We have become this ultra-progressive society, and that was built in. It's a fatal flaw. I'm not a constitutionalist. I don't believe in democracy because democracy means everybody gets a say. I don't want everybody to have a say. I don't want people who have more to gain from voting to take money out of my pocket to have the same say as people who are net positive taxpayers.
I agree with you
I don't
on that.
want people who are contributing to the system. This is what it is, though. You have Somalian daycare scammers who are getting millions of dollars for free because of scams, but the rest of us have to go to work, and if we don't pay our taxes, the IRS is down our throats. They're about to put us in jail.
I agree.
You have welfare queens. You have people taking more from the system than they're getting. This is a terrible idea, and the inherent flaw is this idea that just because you live here, you should have a say in how the government is run.
Let's work on those flaws, right? Let's work on those flaws instead of the blanket statement.
It's a fatal flaw. It's built in. It's
keep everybody that I don't like from voting.
Okay, but you didn't let me finish. It's not a bug. It's a feature. You can't take it out. Your classical liberal foundation of everybody has rights. You don't care about duties. You care about rights. You're going to say everyone should have rights. Okay, let's get into that then. Well, first of all, I want to go back to your assertion that we'd have to say black people can't vote. That's atrocious and ridiculous, and I didn't say that, and I wouldn't say that. However, if black women didn't vote, that would help. If all women didn't vote, we would not be battling trans kids.
It's going to be quite the clip.
We wouldn't be battling, yeah, it's going to be quite the clip. Women voting is the larger issue because this is why they wanted to give women the vote, because women are easily swayed, they're easily propagandized, they tend to vote on emotion. Don't interrupt me, I'm not quite done.
Let her finish. Hold on, let her finish.
It's not done. I'm not done.
Go ahead. We should do timing.
Women vote. They've done a lot of. I have a whole book on this at home that I'm reading, where they've done all this research on women and how and why they vote. And they will vote things like the Nixon-Kennedy election. Women voted for Kennedy not because they knew anything about policy or because he had better ideas. You're still stuck in this paradigm that we're in a war of ideas. Most women don't think that way. They're not going and researching the issues. They go, he's tan and handsome. I like him. He's bald and he's shiny on TV and I don't like him. I don't like his tone. And so they don't vote for him.
I think let me know when we're
this
done
is
if you
like
find a button
not
for it.
my opinion. This is what they say in exit polling. This is what all of these political PACs who are desperately trying to get women's votes find when they do the research. Women vote for security. They vote for a nanny state. and they vote for progressive policies because those sound nicer. That's why in every political cycle, you see all these commercials coming from the Democrats going, Republicans want to take away school lunch and they want to kill your grandma and they don't want her to have her Medicare anymore, because women see that and they're like, I have to protect the innocent babies. They're so helpless. Women shouldn't be in politics because it weaponizes our maternal instinct against our own interests. So that's why you see women. You see women trying to fight ICE agents in the streets, even if the illegal guy has, CP and,
Liberal women are doing that.
Yeah, well, I've argued with conservative women
that
about this as well.
ICE
Yes, they
Sure.
see ICE dragging people out. They see families getting separated, or they see kids behind a fence or whatever. And they're like, we can't do it this way, guys. We can't. So even people like Trump will back off on what they want to do because the women freak out and they're like, we can't do this. It's too mean.
Okay, are we done here? On your rant
Oh,
against
like you
women?
didn't rant and prattle and meander with your stuff, too.
It sounds like you have a lot of disdain for women in general.
Absolutely not. I think women are
let me
wonderful
finish.
in their
Let me
maternal
finish.
role. They shouldn't be in politics.
I'm sure that you would love to have kind of a say on what women can and can't do and what their roles in society should be. I disagree with that. I do think women should be encouraged to become mothers, and we need strong women to lead families and have and raise great kids. However, I am not using a woman's natural biological differences as basically fodder against their right to vote, basically.
Even if it costs you your liberty and it costs you all of your things that you value?
They voted for a majority of them for a Republican in the last election. So it does show that with the right arguments, you can convince people to vote Republican. That is a factual statement of recent elections that happened. So Rachel, if you are just bad at showing people why it's better to not vote and for women to live under the rule of men and only have them make political and financial decisions for them, then just say that, right? In my opinion, I've spent over the last decade on college campuses talking to students from the left, to men and women, basically on why conservative values are better, to sway them to my side. I don't show up. I don't
conservative
let me
values.
finish. I don't show up on a campus and tell 18-year-old girls, hey, you're just too dumb, and your hormones fluctuate, and you totally should leave all political decisions to men. I think you can't handle yourself, and that's why you should totally believe what I say, and stop voting in the future. Let's talk about.
I get to reply to that.
Facts.
I get to reply to that first.
No, you went on for quite some
Brian.
time, so let me finish.
I'm going
that.
to reply to what you just said, because you just said you must really hate women. You must have all this disdain.
I think anybody watching will say that you don't like women, or you hold women of lesser value than men, and I disagree with that.
Okay, well, I'll prove to you that that's not true.
Okay.
Before the passage of the 19th Amendment, the groups, we had two groups. We had the pro-suffrage side, and
Hold on, wait, let her finish.
we had two different groups, pro-suffrage and anti-suffrage. The vast majority of women were absolutely against the 19th Amendment and women's voting rights. Did all of those women also hate other women? Susan B. Anthony herself said if we left it up to women to pass women's voting rights, it never would have happened, that all their support came from progressive socialist men. So I'm asking you, my great-grandmother, who did not think politics was the role of women, was she hateful toward women, or did she instinctively know that this was going to create the gender divide that you don't like? The gender divide you're trying to fight was caused by trying to politicize women and put them in men's roles and have them be involved in politics and government. Did those women hate women?
I don't care if a majority of women were against women's rights.
Well, you're accusing me.
Yeah, she doesn't care. She only cares about what she thinks because her opinion is God. So she starts by completely strawmanning Rachel's argument, which wasn't that she should take away anyone's rights who don't agree with her. If you thought she was shallow, she does not disappoint you. She fails to realize the deeper levels of human behavior when it comes to women. Rachel is talking about how women are more susceptible to propaganda and empathy weaponization, and how their hormonal imbalances can cause inconsistencies in decision-making. Driena's just trying to make Rachel look like some bigot. She thought she had a really good point with that comeback about taking black people's voting rights away, but again, it's only on the surface. Because Rachel was appealing to the differences in male and female behavior, thinking patterns, and hormones, not race. And an amazing point by Rachel to bring up was that libertarians don't care about duties. They only care about rights, which are entitlements minus duties, stuff you get without having to do anything, outlining her pure consumer mindset. Rachel said something when she explained how people will demonize the right when we try to further restrict welfare. But the thing is, and I really need to dig this into your guys' heads, we should never have to depend on the government to feed us or our families. Obviously, there are extreme situations and circumstances that helps to have like a safety net, especially when you're putting a lot into it. But we should always be striving to be sovereign men who provide way more than we consume from our country. And if women are always trying to avoid things that seem too mean or too hard, that means it's our duty. Our sacrifice is having to be the leaders. See, women don't see it that way, as a sacrifice or as a cross to bear. They don't understand that to be a leader, you have to make decisions that hurt people's feelings sometimes, and you can't weigh their desires as the ultimate factor in your decisions. And the thing is, that doesn't feel good to do. It's not easy. And as having been an addict for over a decade, I know more than most people that we can want things with all our heart that are indeed not good for us. And relativistic thinking is how we got there in the first place.
What I'm
Exactly what
saying
you've
is,
done.
what my
Exactly what
message
you
to
said.
women is, don't listen to her. Don't listen to Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Kamala Harris
Don't
or
lump
Hillary
me in.
Clinton
Don't lump me
or
in
any
with
of these
all
women
those
who
people.
put their career first, who think
What if they want to?
have to be independent and prove they can do it on their own. There is no shame, and you are not a loser. If you marry a wonderful guy, you have kids with him, and yes, he's the one that
I agree.
makes all the money,
I
and
agree
you
with
stay
that.
home and you depend on him, that does not make you weak.
I
that
agree
does
with
not
that.
make you a loser, and you don't have to feel ashamed about that, and you shouldn't feel bad about it for 1 minute. It doesn't make you ignorant,
I
and
agree.
you're not going to get beaten and abused.
I agree.
okay?
But
don't
why,
listen to these
why?
women.
What do you have against women that do decide to put their career first and then have kids?
I don't have anything against them, but I asked them
Are
this.
they losers?
I didn't say
Are
they're
they,
losers.
you
I
know,
think
everything that you said.
I asked
people
them this
call
question.
The women that have
and
kids
I'll ask
first.
you the question.
Sure.
What duty are you serving to anyone or anything outside yourself?
Be more specific with your question.
I can't be. Are you performing any duty to anyone or anything outside yourself, or is your life only about you and what you want and serving yourself?
What duty? I wanted to ask you, what duty do you feel I have to anybody outside of myself? But that would just let you talk even more. But I do think that nobody has a duty to anybody but themselves from a legal perspective or from anything.
I see. So
we do. Let me finish
Okay,
answering your
sure,
question.
sure.
Yeah, I think we all have individual choices on the timeline that we pick out for our life, and that I think everybody lives their life as a rational individual that does what is most beneficial to them or what they think is most beneficial to them at the moment. And we don't have a duty to basically make anybody happy outside of ourselves. So I'm sure a bunch of the people
didn't say
watching,
make anyone happy.
People watching, would love to be like, oh, she should have kids like right now, and get off the mic, whatever, get to it. I don't care, and nobody should
I'm
care.
not saying you have to have kids tomorrow, and I'm not going to go personal about you because it's not my business and I don't care, and I don't think that it even is pertinent to what we're talking about. What we're talking about is what's best for society, right? And what I'm saying is men don't get to have this beautiful idea that I don't have a duty to anyone outside myself, because if men didn't do what men do, we all die. So let me give you a scenario. If tomorrow you woke up and it was some weird rapture and all of the men disappeared and it was only women left on the planet. Okay, that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is we wake up tomorrow and all of the women are gone and it's only men left on the planet. Who lives longer?
The women. And will you let me explain why?
Yeah.
So let's say that the women disappeared. The species would die off because only women can have kids. So that's it. We are done.
So they live till they're like 70 and then it's over.
We are done as
So
a
the men
species.
make it how long? Like
their
their natural lifespan?
I'm not talking about that. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So all the men live until they're like 80, 90 and then they die.
Yeah, whoever's correct.
'Kay.
However, and I'm not saying I'm supporting either scenario, obviously.
Right.
But if men did disappear tomorrow, just by statistically, there's a lot of women in the population that would still be pregnant, and then they would have kids and would repopulate the earth, and civilization would continue.
But what if all the male fetuses that the women were pregnant with disappeared also?
Okay, sure.
So only babies that can be born as girls.
Fetus is gone. And I love that you asked this because I thought about this question before, because I know you guys have talked about the scenario. Women are fertile, right, for 5 days before ovulation. So let's say a woman had relations with men 5 days prior to their ovulation day and still have the swimmers in her body, not babies, not a fetus.
Okay.
She would become pregnant. And then, yes, she would have a child. And so, statistically speaking,
But all the boys can't be born, though. There's a weird noxious gas in the air
Oh
that
my
only kills
God,
men.
the-
I'm just
oh,
saying,
now you have to be even more
women
specific.
surviving without men is the hypothetical.
No, that's the hypothetical you gave me. The species would actually survive
Okay.
if men disappeared.
You're avoiding.
because
You're
a percentage
avoiding.
of the population.
You're doing
right
what I
now-
said you would do in
No,
my
no, no,
opening,
no,
and
no,
you're
no.
running
I'm
from the
I'm giving
scenario.
you exactly why that would work. Because right now, as we speak, a percentage of the population worldwide is pregnant right now. Some of them
Here, let me,
without.
wait. That's the
some of
moderator.
them.
I
some of
must
them.
jump in on
She's
this because
avoiding-
this is gonna-
she's
because this is
avoiding
gonna
the
waste a whole
hypothetical.
bunch-
Some of
Your
them
loophole
without
is going to
knowing
waste a bunch of time.
It's not a loophole. It's a
It is a
reality.
loophole because what Rachel is trying to get at here is not in the instance where there are women who, yes, there would be women who are actively pregnant. And so conceivably, if those women were able to make it to term and give birth to the child, then that child
species.
starts at 0. And then
The species would
they're
survive.
arguable, even if it was only female babies, arguably the lifespan of that child would extend beyond that. But perhaps, Rachel, what if you were to refine your question to, you know what, just either all the pregnancies end in that moment
Right.
too, or pregnant women also die, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's
only
just,
the female embryos
it's-
can survive and be born. It doesn't matter. A world of all women,
versus
everybody
a world,
dies.
versus a world of all men.
Yeah.
I think everybody dies. I think it just depends on how long it is before either one does. And both scenarios are terrible.
Women, let me help you and tell you what would really happen. The women would survive a very short period of time because they cannot run the critical
Are you
infrastructure.
like a psychic or something?
No, let me explain it. Water treatment plants run by men. Power plants run by men. The grid goes down. There's no hospitals. There's no more ways to manufacture antibiotics. There's no heart surgeons. Like, even the females who can do that stuff, who can do surgery, who can do first aid, they can't do any of that without this world. Honey, this is the reason why feminism didn't become a thing until the last 100 years, because technology made and maintained by men is the only thing that allows you to believe you don't need men. Do you get that?
Wait. You're
Do you
trying to
get
put
As we can clearly see, and she clearly stated, she can't even perceive what duty she has outside herself, not to society, not to the human race, and not to civilization at all. This is what I mean when I tell you that how you see the world, your worldview, will affect your entire reality and every decision you make from the ground up. It determines how you perceive duty and family and your roles within them. As men, regardless of the culture, we always have a duty outside ourselves and our immediate needs. And as the saying goes, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Literally. When Rachel brings up the hypothetical world of only men or only women, Driena does everything she can to win the argument like it was the Kobayashi Maru test. Winning isn't the point if you have to defy the very point of the hypothetical, and even further than that, you just prove our point again, because even in your bad faith cheat code scenario, you are still appealing to men. Just some women would end up having to force other women not to abort their children, since they'd all be putting their careers first, I guess. I'm just joking, but who knows, and you know what I'm saying. And then those women will be the oppressors. It's ridiculous. She can't even grasp that rights are a social fiction, but power and duty are biological realities. You can't vote your way out of the need for a protector, and you can't talk your way out of the duty to the next generation. Force doctrine is a natural reality. Don't be a simp for a hollow philosophy. If she doesn't see a duty outside herself, she will never see a duty to you. I'm going to end this here, but the link to the full video is in the description. Go watch the whole train wreck for yourself, guys. Stay unchained. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and share the video.